I've actually heard your name from a few other CMOs who used to work at Salesforce, and I think it's a small little circle of Salesforce alums who all went on to become CMOs. So good to finally connect with you.
It is lovely to be here. And yes, I have quite the network of people that have done amazing things in marketing from my time at Salesforce.
That's awesome, Shannon. And Shannon, so obviously, you've sort of moved on from Salesforce to Asana and sort of leading the marketing team there. And I'm sure your team is actively figure out how is Asana evolve in this new age of AI and how does it fit into the market ecosystem of some sorts. Like just curious to hear your journey and like how are you guys thinking about Asana in this new world from a positioning standpoint, and how did you evolve from where you guys were like 2 3 years back? Would be curious to sort of start with that discussion.
Yeah, that is a great question. So I've been at Asana about a year and a half now. You mentioned I was at Salesforce. I spent 12 years at Salesforce. I had a great run. I learned a lot. I did many cool things. I pushed the boundaries of marketing. I was pushed and I pushed myself and I became the marketer I am today. And I really knew I'm like, I want to be a CMO. And I was
Yeah.
very picky about the type of company that I wanted to go to. I wanted to be really passionate. I ran product marketing in many different iterations at Salesforce. And so I was very passionate about the product, right? I know that it is much harder to market a bad product than it is a good product. So product is very important to me, what the product does, what problem it solves, what markets it in, the TAM, all the things. And Asana has that in many ways, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanted to really work with a group of people that I felt were passionate and hungry and woke up every day wanting to win. And we have a great leadership team at Asana. I have a great marketing team at Asana. So that kind of ticks that box. And then lastly, I really was focused on purpose. And we have a great founder and CEO in Dustin Moskovitz. He founded Asana because he wanted to help humanity thrive by making work effortless. And we really do believe that mission. Yes, we're a company. Yes, we focus on pipeline and sales and all the things, but there is a purpose behind it, which is really important. So that is how I came to Asana. Now, what's interesting about my journey to Asana is is going through sort of their own transformation. We'll talk about AI in a second, but that's kind of a secondary transformation to the transformation I entered in, which is how do we take this amazing business that we've grown through PLG, product-led growth, and how do we augment our PLG customer base and our motion with sort of traditional enterprise SaaS sales. And I was really like that to me was a very interesting challenge to solve. So that's why I'm here. Salesforce does have a reputation for doing B2B SaaS marketing really well. And I was really excited to sort of take my knowledge, take my skills and apply it to this transformation that Asana was going to go through. So I joined, I think I signed my Asana offer letter right before, obviously AI has been around for a while. AI is not new at all. It's been around for a year. Sort of that like chat GPT, oh my God thing. And it's funny because when everyone was like, oh my God, what does this mean? Like, build products, put it in your marketing. I felt like so glad I had picked Asana. And here's why. If you think about AI is going to fundamentally disrupt, or I like to say improve, the world and life of knowledge workers. And the great thing about Asana is Asana was created already to do just that. Take away the busy work, make work effortless, make humans more productive. So that was already Asana's mission. Similarly, the way our product was built, it was built on, it's a proprietary data model that we call the work graph. The foresight that Dustin had to build it this way is amazing because of our, again, I'm doing my product marketing geek out a little to you. Because of that great foundation, we were able to implement AI features that much faster and easier. So I like to say everyone is talking about AI. Asana actually has AI features in market that customers are using today, and we're constantly launching more based off of our learning. So it's a great time to be at Asana, driving the transformation into enterprise and also driving what it means for knowledge workers to use AI in their day-to-day. So really exciting.
Very helpful introduction, Shannon. I have a couple of follow-up questions actually. I think you mentioned an important transition for the company, moving from some sort of PLG, but also now using that as a force to go into enterprise, right? Like, how does that transformation look like internally? Like, when you sort of look at your last 18 months of journey, right? Like, what are like the 2-3 things that you feel like you got right, and that is very important to make this transition right?
I love that question, and because I am a transparent person. I will say high highs and low lows. Like it's, but all in all, it's been great. I do believe like through like struggle or being uncomfortable, that's how you grow and that's how you learn. And I will say like, look, like there's a certain motion that works in PLG and there are certain motions that work in enterprise, and the strategy cannot be just mush them together, because that's not what works. What we've really embraced at Asana is how do we take some elements of the enterprise playbook, in-person events, EBCs, we call them work innovation centers, a thought leadership platform that execs care about, sales plays that are usually marketing driven, product launches. Like, how do you take those and how do you translate them into what we call product-led sales? I think it's an industry term. I don't think we can take credit for it, because it's not kind of an either or. And I think that sometimes, like when people ask me the question, it's like, okay, well, you were here and then you wanted to be here. And I'm like, no, it's actually kind of a continuum, right? Like, and customers are on a continuum, our teams culturally are on a continuum. And so how do we take the best of this? How do we take the playbook that we know that works? And how do we execute it in a way that is meaningful for our enterprise customers, but doesn't completely forget about sort of that PLG user base that we've grown and nurtured over the last 14 years that Asana's been in existence?
That's awesome. And just like a question. So in a quarter, let's say, for all the deals that you guys win, is it typically like replacing some sort of an incumbent in the company, or is it all net new happening, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. I will say, like, here, and again, part of the reason I joined Asana is I worked for a very large company that wasn't actually using Asana. And I was like, oh my God. And I was, when I joined Salesforce, it was 3,000 people. When I left, it was 80,000. You can't underestimate how much time is lost in busy work and coordination across 1,000-person teams, multiple time zones, multiple languages, right? Like that it unnecessarily slows companies down. And so what I realized is like, oh my God, every company in the world is going to use Asana. Or better said, every company in the world needs Asana. It's up to me to make sure that they pick us and they pick us quickly. And so that is like part of like there is such a need for Asana that sometimes we displace spreadsheets. Right? Like that's what's like the old way of working is still prevalent in so many companies, and people don't even know how inefficient they are. So it runs the gamut. And Asana does a lot of things. Like we do customized workflows. We have AI functionality. Like the potential for Asana to be truly sort of like the single source of truth for work in many organizations is really, really high.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned about the AI features in the beginning. Like, what are like one or two features that you actually are a big fan of that have sort of helped you make you more productive?
Oh, so many. So personally, I've created an AI workflow, an AI team member at Asana that writes like me. So it's in Asana and it's fantastic. So I've trained it with the prompts and it's right in Asana, and I can kick off workflows based off it. So it's not just, write something for me, right? Because you can use other tools to do that, but it will, hey, write this for me and then send it to this place to be posted, or this team to do something with it, right? Again, that's removing the friction, making work go faster. It's not me having to write the thing and cut and paste it into something else and email it to people and hope they got it and hope they responded, right? That's some of the ways it makes it easier. What I really love about it, again, think of a company that is working across time zones and languages and, doesn't know who's doing what by when, all the things. Imagine if you could ask a project what was on track and what was not. If you could use natural language to be like, hey, project, what's off track? What's going well? With Asana AI, we answer that for you. You don't need to hunt down a person. You don't need to be like, someone's on PTO or someone is in London. It's the middle of the night there. You ask the project tells you. Like that is transformative.
That's a great use case, actually. I can think of how it's especially helpful for global teams and also leaders who are spread so thin that they want to quickly go into a campaign and be like, hey, what's happening in this campaign? What's sort of blocking it from achieving the full potential?
It tells you. And I want to give you one more. Can I give you one more? Because this one is super basic, but it's very cool. Like, how many of you listening, watching, have spent hours in a Google Doc being like, hey, everybody put your project update in the Google Doc because we need to send it to the CMO or the CEO or the board or whomever. And you're like, oh my God, Tokyo, like where's your update? And like, oh my God, like we can't get that. And like that person is like, they didn't see the email. Like Asana can write status update using AI for you automatically. Hit the button, the update comes, it's beautiful. You might want to tweak it. Usually you do at Asana, it's humans plus AI are the best. You tweak it, off it goes. Minutes, not hours, not days, not having to chase your coworkers down, being like, put yourself in the project. Like it seems simple, but again, think of the time and the friction that you save with something like that.
That's very helpful. Sharon, like before we sort of go into your Salesforce experience, one thing that I think about constantly and often is that productivity and collaboration is still a large market, but also like there are many players in the category, right? And so, like any other SaaS category these days, there are like 5 to 10 companies in each space trying to figure out how do they differentiate themselves, etc. Like I'm sure you think about that problem quite a bit in terms of like how do you really elevate Asana's brand and sort of really differentiate amongst a few other players. Like how do you think about it, and also what's your guidance to companies who are also in a similar journey, trying to sort of really stand out from a few other good players in the category? Like what is like the right set of things that a company or a product should do?
Yeah, I love this question. I'm going to answer it, which is going to sound basic, but I'll explain to you what I mean. I mean, first and foremost, you have to be laser focused on your customer and what your customer wants. And so, of course, you're like, okay, cool, that's groundbreaking. But what I mean by that is, I see marketers make the mistake so often of being so laser focused on their competitors, they lose track of what their customer needs. And I've even seen like it currently and in past lives, like we would launch something and then you see your competitor, you're like, wait a second, that looks like, I think they're watching us. Like that looks a little too close. And I mean, that's not bad. Like you should be 100% aware of what the market is doing. And like, so I'm not saying ignore it completely, but if you focus too much on that, what you are going to miss out on is how do you speak your customer's language? They don't always speak the way marketing speaks. They also don't always speak the way internally you talk about your product or whatever it is that you're selling. And I think for us, like when we were thinking about like Asana, how do we position up market? How do you explain in one sentence what Asana does, right? Because people might know Asana. If you don't know Asana, you don't hear the name and automatically think like collaborative work management. It's like, what is that one sentence that will resonate with your customers, that a customer needs or wants to do, but also communicates your value prop? And so for us right now, if you see an Asana ad, it's going to be like where work connects to goals. Super simple. But every single person out there, they don't want to just do work for the sake of work. If you're doing work, if you're sitting in an office, if you're commuting to work right now while you're listening to this, you want your work to connect to your goals, your personal goals, your company goals, your financial goals, whatever it is. And so none of our competitors are saying that. And that's okay, because I don't care what they're saying. I care that we have stuff in market that our customers will really connect with.
And can I ask like a follow-up question? That's fantastic actually. Like even having that unique statement obviously positions Asana differently in someone's mind. But to the other point you mentioned, Asana is also a very broad product, right? Like a marketing team can use it, a sales team can use it. Like how do you even like think about like, hey, if I have to be laser focused on like one persona, like do you want to do marketing only for us marketing folks? Like how do you think about those various personas that you have and like figure out how to be laser focused at the same time, right?
Yes.
Right.
So we think of it in terms of a messaging hierarchy. So when you think of like, yeah, top line message where work connects to goals, that is applicable to everyone, not just different departments, but also size of the company, right? A small company wants their work to connect to the goals just as much as a big one. And then as we get as we go from sort of broad awareness into, and I'll use the funnel for an example. I know marketers will be like, the funnel is dead. There's no funnel. I understand. But like for purposes of illustration, let's talk about the funnel. Yeah. When you go from sort of like awareness to consideration to intent, all those things, like that's where you get more focused and targeted with your message. And the great thing about marketing today is we have more data on our customers than we ever have. And we also have more tools to access and make insights of that data. And so it's like, okay, once you start knowing, is the person a marketer or are they in HR, or is it a marketer at an enterprise company versus an SMB? That's when you can tailor your message to their pain. I say all the time, people don't buy software. They build an app to solve a pain. Right? Like no one wakes up and is like, you know what I need to buy today? collaborative work management. They don't do
Right.
that. Hey, I'm running a marketing team across different languages and different time zones, and I have no idea when our campaigns are launching. How do we fix that? So we might pique their interest with where work connects to goals, but once we know they're a marketer, once we know what they care about, that's where we're like, you know what? This is what Asana means for campaign management. And that's how you connect to your sales team, right? It goes beyond marketing, but that's again, focusing on what your customer wants to hear and how you solve their problem.
That's very helpful. And before I go into Salesforce, and one thing I'll say, I do think Asana is very, very popular amongst marketing teams. I'm sure it's not like a
Oh, it
surprise,
is.
but I've seen
Oh, it
that
is.
right, in communities and stuff. That name keeps coming up compared to other tools in the space, especially for marketing teams. So I'm sure you
Yeah,
don't.
and if
But
you don't have it, if you're a marketer, like you need it. Like I'm not just like I came to Asana because I was like every marketing team needs this. Marketing is hard. It is really hard. We are constantly trying to show our value and ROI and oh my God, we give you so much marketing budget. What are you doing with it? You don't have to want to worry about chasing people down to know what is happening in your
yeah,
organization.
that's a great point. And Sharon, now I want to go into Salesforce in general, right? It's funny how suddenly now Salesforce is all about agents, right? And it's so ingrained in my mind right now that I think of Salesforce as like agent force and like hey, they are the platform to sort of go and build agents. And they've somehow created like some sort of an aura around them. It's in like a very quick span of time, right? So very, very impressed with like what they do in general. And I'm sure you are the key part of how they ran marketing for the last 10, 12 years. But what makes Salesforce good at like marketing? Like what makes them special from a cultural standpoint? Like any sort of thoughts that you can share would be very helpful.
Yes. So here's what I will say. I will say one of the best parts as working at working as a marketer and Salesforce, and like I say, like I kind of grew up there. Like I was like a, director and I made it all the way up to EVP and I went from running a 4-person team to a 700-person team, right? So I grew up. I joke that I was raised by Mark Benioff. I'm sure he'd be like, what? But anyway, that got weird. But what I mean by that is Salesforce values marketing. Like they value the contributions and they value that emotional connection that marketing can make between the customer and the product. And that's where it's like, that's why it's so fun to work at Salesforce as a marketer. I would say they're also kind of laser focused on the customers, but what they also do very well, and if you've worked in Salesforce marketing for a long time, you are constantly pushed to think bigger, move faster, and go to where the puck is going before it's going there. And that's, that's challenging. And sometimes, don't get me wrong, to be like, oh my God, what am I missing? Like, what should we be doing? But it also gives you a lot of runway to do really creative things and think about how software is truly transforming the world. So I think that's why you see like Salesforce is usually talking about things first and loudest. And it's such ingrained in the culture that marketing is a valuable part of that sort of customer journey.
So aptly put, actually. Now I think about it, like you are probably right. Like they speak in advance of where the puck is going, what they did with Agent Force, right? I'm sure they're still sort of actively building that product and sort of trying to get there. But the fact that they've captured the mind space of folks before it becomes like important for anyone is fascinating, to your point. And the other question Shannon, I had was you said an important point about the fact that the company pushes marketing to sort of think bigger and also take creative risks. Like, how is it possible to make that happen in such a big company like Salesforce, right? Because you always try to minimize risks as you sort of grow bigger.
That's a great question. And I honestly, it's funny because again, I mentioned I would join when there were like 3,000, 3,500. I can't even remember, and left when we were around 80. And yes, you slow down, right? Between 3,000 to 80,000, but I think culturally speed is valued. And so, yes, there's an element of risk, but the risk worth the reward ratio is slanted on the risk side. Like, what is that? Fortune favors the bold type of mentality. And it's just kind of ingrained in marketers and especially marketing leaders and especially product marketers at Salesforce, right? Product marketers are the heartbeat of the marketing organization. Like, what is the messaging? What is the positioning? Where are we going? And more importantly, where are we taking the market? Like, we are taking the market. Where are we taking our customers? And so again, there's a lot of value put on having bold ideas. It doesn't mean all the bold ideas will happen, but it is culturally celebrated to bring those bold ideas to the table.
Right. Another question I had was you mentioned about like being very focused on like customer needs and customer sentiments, and I've seen that said by many Salesforce execs, not only just you. Have and they don't mean it just because of the sake of it. They genuinely like mean it, right? And they mean that hey, like focus on customers. Like how is it done in a practical setting? Like for example, is it like you have to talk to 5 customers before coming to a positioning exercise? Like what is
Yes.
it practically?
Yes and yes. Yes. Again, back to the cultural element of it, meeting with customers is I wouldn't say it's a value because Salesforce has very like strong values, but you would never propose messaging, positioning, product features unless you had spent significant time in the field with customers. And quite frankly, like I've taken that, like if someone's like listening to me like, oh, well, what do you learn from that? What does that mean? Like in my role today at Asana and any future role I might have, I will never put like a first call deck or a sales pitch deck in front of sales unless I have sat across the table from a customer and pitched it myself. Because it's really easy to do marketing on a whiteboard with all your marketing buddies around a table with your afternoon snack. It is much harder. And I think again, like I didn't learn from Salesforce, like you must pitch it before you launch it. But it's again part of that, like just like part of the motion is talking to customers to get that out of the 4 walls, virtual 4 walls now, I guess, with everyone from home point of view before you actually put it in market.
That's very helpful. And Shan, I think the big part of this is also what you mentioned before, and also supplementing spoke before that it's fun to be in marketing at Salesforce, right? And I'm sure it's comes top down from Mark. And similarly at Asana, like you said, right? It's fun to be in a place where you're transforming work, and it comes from Dustin, I'm sure. Like from your experience working with Mark, Dustin, like what makes a great sort of CEO CMO relationship, and what roles should CEOs play in actively shaping the work of a marketer?
I love that question. So I definitely learned a lot from Mark, and I love working with Dustin. I think I've said this a lot lately, both like to my friends and to people on podcasts. The role of CMO is really hard. It is really difficult. You
Right.
are forced to context switch constantly. You have to be everything from incredibly creative to incredibly analytical all on the same day. Similarly, you often have one of the only sort of discretionary buckets of money for a CFO looking down the list. It's like real estate, it's IT, and it's marketing spend, right? And so that there's a lot of pressure in making sure that you are providing value for that. And sometimes it's easy to measure certain aspects of marketing, and other aspects it's harder, right? But it doesn't matter to a lot of people that are still looking at the number. I will say what I love about Dustin in particular is he definitely respects marketing. I think he would not, I don't think he'd call himself a marketer. And so he really sort of respects the knowledge that I have and sort of the career I've dedicated the last 25 years to. And so he will have opinions. I will ask for his opinions because it's, he has great opinions. But what I think in the best CEO CMO relationship is the CEO who has a point of view, is really vocal and communicative about the overall strategy for the company, but also gives the CMO some runway for what that means from a marketing perspective. So I would say my other tip for CMO and CEO relationship is, and I struggle with this too. This is like you have to make sure you're constantly communicating what's going on. I think marketers run so fast and so hard. You're doing the thing. Sometimes you need to take a step back and you be like, CEO, whomever it is, Mark, Dustin, whoever, like, this is what we've done. This is what we saw. This is what we've learned. I think that's really important because otherwise it could be like, what are they doing over there with all that money? Making sure you're proactive.
That's a great point, Shannon. That's very helpful. And just a couple of last questions. I'm sure you're busy. The work innovation summit that came through, that is being planned right now at Asana, how did that came as an idea? Because it sort of obviously elevates Asana to a place where we care about innovation at work rather than talking about like, hey, collaboration. Let's talk about collaboration. You know what I mean? Like there is a different element to it, and I'm just curious to understand like how did that idea come through, and like what exactly happens in a summit like that?
Yes. So I think for us, as you think about like, okay, well, what's different from a PLG playbook from an enterprise playbook? For an enterprise playbook, you need a thought leadership platform. And you're like, okay, well, what is a thought leadership platform? Well,
Right.
said another way, you need something that people care about that is not just your product or service, right? Like, of course, it needs to be related to your product or service, but it can't just be your product or service, right? Because people are busy. Executives have a lot on the plate. I mean, even myself, I probably get 30 cold emails a day with people trying to get my attention, right? And someone being like, hey, do you want to buy software? Like, delete, don't look at that. So you have to offer something of value. And so for us, we have something called the Work Innovation Lab. It's an amazing part of our marketing team. Shout out to Dr. Rebecca Hines, who runs it. And basically what we're able to do is look at what is happening with our customers, look at the data around work, do some research, and we're able to offer custom insights around work innovation. Like, that's kind of cool. That's like a good thought leadership platform, right? So you're like, okay, well, we have something to say. We need to say it to people in mass, because enterprise B2B marketing, enterprise SaaS software, you need relationships with people. Like, most people aren't going to spend millions and millions of dollars on software if they've never met a person. Slightly different from that PLG motion, right? So we're like,
Right.
okay, we have this amazing lab. We have all these insights. We have all these things to say that's actually valuable for our customers. It's actually going to help them do their jobs, help them work with their teams better. What if we actually did an in-person event and brought all these people together? Yes, we'll talk about our product, but more importantly, we are going to talk about trends for marketers using AI, trends that companies can use, tips and best practices for, working more collaboratively together. So that's kind of where the idea for the event was to be like, bring our thought leadership platform to life, build relationships with our enterprise customers. And I will say it was a new motion. That's not the PLG playbook. In-person events, they're a lot of work. They are expensive, right? You can measure some things, you can't measure some other things. Like, that's not the sort of PLG playbook. But we talked about it, and again, this is why I love our CEO, Dustin Moskovitz. He was like, "Okay, let's try it." We did it last year, 150 people. Cool. We learned a lot. We made some mistakes. We went back. We did 2 events last year. This year we did 8 events, and our largest event in New York, so sort of like the second year of the event that started it all, is going to be 1,000 people, right? So again, like, we did small, we learned, we proved the ROI, and then we're like, okay, we think we can go bigger. Maybe next year it'll be 10,000 people. I don't know, but that was a really thing that the whole marketing team, but also the whole company, has rallied around as a temple of our marketing strategy.
That's great. And who is this event for? Is it for all colleagues or HR?
So the event is, again, I don't know when this is launching, but if somebody is in New York on October 22nd and want to go, call me. So it's a combination of what we call the buyers. So the executives, the CMO, the CPO, the COO, as well as some of our users, because what we're seeing is there's a magic when you bring the people who are deeply using Asana every day, right, and love it, and like are in the workflows and getting the value. There's a value of bringing them together with the exec sponsor, who's getting the value of the productivity of the team.
Right.
So that was the philosophy this year. So we'll you have to have me on again. I'll let you know how it works.
That's awesome, Shannon. Hey, and a couple of last questions. How did that? This is my own curiosity. The number from 150 to like 1,000 is a big jump, right? Like, that is like, obviously, we know how hard it is to run events and also get a particular number like that. Like, what happened in those 2 years? Like, was there any channels you guys focused on to invite people? Was it like a little bit more dollars on paid? Like, how did that jump happen? Or is it like organic content? Right?
I think it was 2 things. I think one, first and foremost, we showed the value to the sales team of how different it was when they got their people there. So they didn't really know before, because we hadn't done it. So they didn't know. And they saw the difference in the relationships. They saw the difference in the conversations. And so that was number one. The sales team sees the value. And so you bet they were picking up the phone and they were inviting people to it. I think the second thing is we went bigger with the event. So last year it was only a half day. Again, we didn't know. Like, I honestly, like, the goal was to get 150. I'm like, oh my God, what if no one comes to our party? What if we have like 5 people? Like, I literally had no idea. I have to tell you, like, for a month before, I was like, not sleeping. So we made the event bigger. We targeted more personas. We have a full day of content versus a half day, right? So there again, there's more content, more reasons for people to come.
Cost was a great tip. I loved it. And my last question to you, Shannon, before we end, any guidance for marketing folks who are in the middle management who also aspire to become like VPs, EVPs, CMO someday? Like, what if you have to reflect on your 25 years journey growing up in Salesforce and now sort of leading marketing and Asana? Like, what do you think middle management marketing leaders should think about before they sort of aspire for like a very senior role?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to sort of take stock of your marketing skills across what I consider like the 5 key competencies of a CMO. To most CMOs, like they were good at one, they either were like in product marketing or they were in sort of demand gen field marketing, right? Like we all kind of did one thing first before we kind of oversee. And you don't have to be a 10 out of 10. In fact, nobody is. I certainly am not. And so I would say first, assess yourself across product marketing, sort of demand gen field marketing events, comms, marketing analytics, and sort of brand creative. And those are big buckets. And you can add some, can say, what about content? Like, fine, you can add content or you can put content in those. But those are the 5 things. And be like, okay, how well do I know this? And how good am I at these things? And if you're really low or have no exposure to any of them, maybe when you think of your next role or your next project, you try to take something on in that to build up your skill set. But most importantly, when you become a CMO, how do you hire to fill those gaps? For example, I know how important data is in marketing. It is important. If you don't understand your data, and if you don't have access to your data, and if you're not managing your marketing campaigns to show ROI, like you most likely will have issues at some point at whatever company you're in. That is not my happy space. I understand it. I can read things. I understand pipeline coverage. That is not my happy space. One of my favorite employees on my team is my head of marketing analytics and ops, because that's his place. So we balance each other very well because he is so good at it. He augments the areas for me and for the team and for the company that I'm as good in. So being kind of self-aware of where you need help, I think, is really important too.
On the other point that I noted down is make sure that you communicate, take a step back and communicate to your leadership team or CEOs as to what is happening in marketing, right? Like, here is the program I've planned, here is what actually came through, here is what I learned, etc. So that you keep sort of drumming the same beat, even internally within the org, right? So great.
I will say, like, I like my own, like I have these weird missions that I take up every so now. And my new mission right now is normalize making mistakes. I think in marketing, because we're always marketing, like even when we're not marketing, we're marketing, right? Like we're like, everything was great. Everything was fantastic. Look at what we did. And like, and I do that. Like, let me be clear. Like that's like, again, that's happy space. And I think for marketing to continue to be respected and have a seat at the table, I think it's really important that we as a profession can acknowledge when we made mistakes, and not just acknowledge it, but also like promote it and or share it widely so people know that we're not just like in this our own echo chamber and telling each other how wonderful we are. We are taking the money we are given, the importance of sort of messaging and positioning and driving pipe for our company. Like we see that as like a privilege, and we can acknowledge when we did things wrong, but we will learn from those mistakes and make it better next time.
That's a great point, Sharon. When you said normalizing those mistakes, like mine immediately went to like my favorite emails are those emails where the marketers make a mistake while sending an email because it's
those are great.
And then you sort of and then you're like, oh wow, that's a very well done like comeback, right? Because you sort of accepted it and sort of acknowledged it and moved on. So but it's been an amazing chat, Shannon. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're busy and you're planning for more events, and the October 22nd or whenever the event is happening at New York, I'm sure you're busy for it, but a privilege to host you, and very excited to see where Asana goes from here.
Always a pleasure to chat.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate it.